join me in prayer? God, who created all things, we do not understand all the mysteries of your world. We stumble over our thoughts trying to make sense of things that make no sense. The one thing we know for sure, the one thing to which we cling, is that you are with us. Your rod and your staff, they comfort us. In you we are safe. Grant that our eyes would be enlightened by the move of your Spirit, and may the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. I guess the idea of a king held more power in earlier times, when people's daily lives depended on a king to keep them safe, fed, and well. A king was seen as if not totally divine, or as divine if not totally divine, invested with power and authority to determine how people would live. If the king was good, the people would flourish. If the king was incompetent or mean or greedy, the people would suffer. It's hard for us to imagine a life like that. It's hard for us to think of a king as anything other than a figurehead, or maybe the father of a princess in a children's movie. Even a president doesn't come close to the power held by a king in a functioning monarchy. A president's power is purposefully restrained by a system that is supposed to provide checks and balances. Many people in the Christian mainline churches have moved away from using the term Christ the King Sunday. They've moved to titles like Reign of Christ Sunday, which is perfectly fine, but still does not allow the modern mind to wrap itself around the concept trying to be communicated. This is, by the way, Christ the King or Reign of Christ Sunday. Next year, it's the last Sunday in our church year, and next Sunday will begin Advent, which is a time of preparing ourselves to welcome Jesus, both as the baby born in Bethlehem and as the one who will return to bring a new world into existence. The framers of the rhythm of our church year begin and end with the promise of Jesus' return, which is a very strange promise. This is the premise on which we are working. I know so many of you can recite from memory what I'm about to say. So many of you have had the great privilege of hearing it a million times on a million different Sundays and at Bible studies and other church-related events. But there are some even more fortunate people who have never heard these words. They have never contemplated that there could be a being or a spirit or something that is so far beyond us that we cannot encapsulate it in thought, and yet so near to us that it knows our every longing. So here once more the promise on which we base our life. We believe that there is a God, an infinite being who created the whole of the cosmos. We believe that this God placed people on this planet, either through the miracle of a literal 7-day creation or through a lengthy process of evolution or some combination of both. We believe that God interacted and continues to interact with people, that God is calling us to live lives of love and service, lives that reflect an understanding that we are not the ultimate power, but that in our efforts to live a proper life, we influence the world to be a better place. We can help bend the moral arc of the universe just a little closer toward justice. We also believe that God chose a particular time and place to enter the world, to leave heaven and step into time, to step out of infinity and into a finite body born of a woman who was not a member of the elite or the wealthy or the powerful. God chose to enter the world as Jesus in complete vulnerability. And Jesus submitted to being parented. And Jesus consented to live in a body as it grew and changed and felt hunger and knew cold. And this Jesus, who was fully God and fully human, walked all around Israel, teaching, healing, and feeding people. And that angered the religious elite and the Romans. And together they conspired to have him killed, and they succeeded. Jesus died. I won't try to explain if the God part of Jesus died, or if the God part slipped away, or just how all of that happened. The remarkable thing, however, is not that Jesus died. The remarkable thing is that after 3 days, he had been dead for 3 whole days, dead enough for there to be no question that he was really and truly dead. He walked out of the tomb, resurrected, made new, transformed. He appeared to his disciples and to others, and through all of this, a religion was born. A religion that espouses to love our neighbors and our enemies. A religion that tells us that we should care for our neighbor. A religion that teaches us to practice self-control and care for one another. And we believe that at some point, Jesus will return from hanging out with God. And when he returns, he will establish a new way of living, a new society where everyone is equal, where we all have everything we need, a society of justice, mercy, and peace. And we begin and end our church calendar with reminders that we need to be preparing for that day. Ephesians is one of the letters most scholars believe was not written by Paul, but instead by one of his students. They also think that this is not really a letter to a single church. It's rather a letter meant to be shared by many churches, like something our denominational headquarters might send out to help us understand what we are to do and how we are to act. The section we read today has so much flowery language about the power of Christ. We can see the flourishes with which the author was working to help us envision the grandness of the ideas he is trying to communicate. And then we have this verse 18. So that with the eyes of your heart enlightened, you may perceive what is the hope to which he has called you. What are the riches of his glorious inheritance among the saints? See, this Jesus we follow is so much more than a teacher. This Jesus is so much more than a king or a president. Jesus is the one who calls us to hope beyond all other hopes. Jesus tells us over and over again that this world is not a terrible place. This world is the center of all our activities. It is our playground. And even when terrible things happen, we are those who can see the riches of his glorious inheritance. There are no words that can capture such an enormous idea. God did not create us and abandon us. God did not set us up with a bunch of rules that we have no chance of following and sit back to watch us struggle. God instead conspired with us to break the chains of sin and death so that we can live as more than conquerors. We can live as the children of the one who loves us enough to come to us. And it is for this we can say, thanks be to God. Amen.